I was 12 when we moved to Elmswood. My mother said it would be a fresh start, a quiet place to heal after my father's death. But Elmswood wasn't just quiet, it was silent. No children played in the streets. No bells rang from the old stone church that loomed at the village's center. The villagers seemed afraid of something. They'd avoid the church, walk faster when passing it, heads bowed like they didn't want to be seen by something. One afternoon, I asked the village baker, Mr. Hale, "Why doesn't anyone go to church here?" His face darkened. "We prayed too much, boy," he muttered. "We called him, but he didn't come alone." When I pressed him, he just shook his head and warned me, "Some doors once opened never close." I didn't understand, but I would. The forbidden door. My mother made me promise never to go near the church, but curiosity is louder than fear. One evening, the sky bruised purple with an incoming storm. I approached the abandoned church. The wooden doors were cracked and rotting, but surprisingly, they opened easily when I pushed. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with the scent of old stone and something else. Something sweet and decaying. At the altar stood a large wooden cross, empty. But what caught my eye was the burned silhouette of a man's body on the wood, like someone had once been crucified there and burned into it. And then I heard it, a voice soft and layered like it came from deep beneath the ground. "Samuel!" I froze. "Come closer, my child." I stepped forward, heart hammering. The voice grew clearer. "They abandoned me, Samuel, but you came." Suddenly, a cold wind blew the door shut behind me and the windows cracked. I turned to run, but I wasn't alone anymore. A figure now stood beneath the cross. The broken Savior. The man was tall, draped in tattered white robes, his skin pale and split like cracked porcelain. Thorns were buried deep into his skull, their roots tangled beneath his skin. Blood dripped slowly from his hands and feet, but the wounds moved, whispering in tongues. He smiled, but there was nothing kind in it. "You know me, don't you?" I could barely speak. "Jesus?" I was. His voice echoed as if thousands were speaking through him. "They prayed to me, but they did not know what they invited." He stepped closer. "When they nailed me, they thought they were ending me, but pain opened another door." His bleeding hand hovered over my head. "Sin answered, and sin wears the faces you trust." I wanted to run, but my body was frozen, rooted by fear. "You came to me, you believed, and belief gives me form again." His hand touched me. My vision blurred, and that's when the visions began. The visions of sin. I saw flashes of places I'd never been. Churches consumed by black vines, crosses that bled, villages like mine swallowed by shadow. I saw the people of Elmswood, their ancestors, gathered in this very church, desperate, praying for salvation during a famine centuries ago. But what answered them wasn't God. It was something that wore his name, something that had once been nailed to the cross and left something behind. When I snapped back to reality, he was gone, but his whispers stayed with me. The haunting begins from that night. He never left. I'd see him at the foot of my bed at midnight, his cracked eyes watching me. Sometimes he'd sit at my window, his bleeding hand resting on the glass. His voice followed me. When I passed the village well, "Samuel, I thirst." When I walked through the woods, "Samuel, why do you fear me? You called me." When I closed my eyes at night, "Samuel, drink of my sin." I told my mother, but instead of denying it, she broke down crying. She whispered, I prayed to him too when your father died. I asked for him to come back, but what returned was wrong. I realized she knew. She had seen him too. Part 6. Possession. Days passed, but I no longer felt like myself. I would wake up standing outside barefoot in the mud, not remembering how I got there. I would speak to people, and they'd stare at me in terror, because sometimes I spoke in voices that weren't mine. Once, I passed an old woman in the street, and I heard myself say, "My flesh is sweet, my blood is warm. Drink, and you shall never thirst." But I didn't remember speaking. The villagers began to avoid me. I heard them whisper, "He walks with the broken Savior. He's been chosen." I begged my mother to leave the village. "We can't," she whispered. "He's bound to you now. He will walk with you wherever you go." One night, I returned to the church. I wanted to end it. I wanted to face him. The doors opened for me as if they were waiting. The cross still hung, still burned with the shadow of his body. "You returned, my faithful one." His voice echoed around me. He stepped from the darkness, his arms wide in mockery of welcome. "Do you see now? I am the prayer answered. I am the faith fulfilled. You made me real again." I screamed, "What do you want from me?" "To be known, to be believed, to spread again through your words, through your fear, through your faith." He touched my forehead, and I collapsed, visions flooding me again. This time of me standing in front of other villages, other churches, telling stories about him, summoning him into their lives. "You are my disciple now." When I awoke, the church was empty, the doors wide open. I wasn't alone inside anymore. I wasn't alone inside my own body. Now, I walk the streets of Elmswood. Children point and whisper, "There's Samuel, the boy who walks with Jesus." But they don't understand. It's not Jesus who walks with me. It's the thing that came when they called his name too many times. It wears his crown. It bears his wounds. It speaks in his voice. And it waits patiently for someone else to believe. The girl who heard his voice.
My name is Anna, and I met Samuel when I was 14. I didn't know his story. Not yet. When he arrived in our village, Graymore, he walked alone. He spoke softly. He seemed normal. But there was something in his eyes, something too old for a boy his age. He began gathering us at night, telling strange stories, stories about a savior who returned after the cross failed to hold him. The adults didn't listen, but we, the children, we followed him. His words were soft but magnetic. When he spoke, the air thickened. It felt like we were breathing him in. "Have you heard of the cross that bled?" Samuel would whisper. "It weeps in the dark for those who will follow." One night after the gathering, I asked him, "Samuel, is this Jesus you talk about, the one from the church?" He smiled faintly. "I walk with him." I thought he meant like a believer. I was wrong, so wrong. That's when the strange things began. The stone cross in the center of Graymore cracked overnight. Crows gathered in impossible numbers, circling the village bell tower, silent, watching. Some of the children who sat closest to Samuel began to act strange. They would speak to themselves in corners. They would wake up with blood around their mouths and not know why. When I told my mother about Samuel's stories, she grew pale and gripped my wrist tight. "That boy," she whispered, trembling, "the boy who walks with him." She ordered me to stay away from him, but I couldn't. Something in me wanted to hear more. Something in me craved it. One evening, I saw Samuel sitting alone near the village well. I approached carefully. "Samuel," I said, "what happened in your old village?" "In Elmswood?" He didn't look at me. He just traced his finger along the rim of the well, whispering, "Elmswood is still there, but the people, they belong to him now." I shivered. "What do you mean?" "They prayed too hard. They believed too much. When you beg for a savior, you don't get to choose what answers." He finally turned to me, his eyes distant, almost hollow. "Do you want to hear him, Anna?" Before I could answer, I heard it, a faint humming voice rising from the dark well. It wasn't the wind. It whispered my name. "Anna, come closer." I stumbled backward, heart racing. "Did you hear that?" Samuel only smiled. He knows you now. Over the next few days, more children followed Samuel. They began wearing handmade thorn crowns. They stopped attending church. They whispered to each other in strange, ancient words I couldn't understand. The village priest, Father Marius, finally confronted Samuel in the middle of the square. "What are you teaching these children?" the priest demanded. Samuel tilted his head, his soft voice carrying an unnatural calm. "I'm teaching them to believe. Isn't that your job?" Father Marius trembled. "Believe in what? You speak of a broken thing that wears the name of Christ." "It is Christ," Samuel said, "but not as you know him. This is the Christ who remained on the cross when the prayers ended, the Christ who feeds on the cracks in your faith." The priest raised his crucifix. "You will leave this village." Samuel only smiled, stepping closer until the crucifix burned black in the priest's hand. "I already belong to you, Father. You've prayed to me all your life." Father Marius screamed as his crucifix cracked and shattered. Samuel's voice grew louder. "You prayed for him to return, and here I am." I couldn't sleep that night. I kept hearing the whispers, the humming from the well, the faint tapping at my window. I wanted to run. I wanted to leave Graymore, but I was already marked. When I looked in the mirror, I saw faint traces of thorned roots growing beneath my skin. I was becoming one of them. I confronted Samuel the next day. "Why me? Why us?" He looked at me with something like sadness. "Because you believed, Anna. The more you fear, the more you believe, and he grows stronger through you." Tears welled in my eyes. "You can stop this. You can fight him." Samuel's smile faded. "There is no him and me anymore. There's only us." And then his voice changed. It was no longer his. "My child, drink of my sin." I ran, but his voice followed. The people of Graymore began vanishing. One by one, homes were found abandoned. Stone crosses toppled and bleeding. The church bell rang at midnight, though no one pulled the rope. Crows gathered on rooftops, staring silently as if waiting for something. I saw Samuel standing near the well again, surrounded by the remaining children. They chanted in low voices, "Drink of his sin, drink of his sin, drink of his sin." Samuel turned to me, his face pale, his eyes dark and hollow. "It's too late, Anna. He walks with us now, and soon he will walk with you too." His shadow stretched across the ground, twisting, forming the shape of the cross. But on that cross, something still hung. Something alive. When the last of Graymore's churches fell, I fled to the mountains. I wasn't running toward safety. I was running toward the Order of the Severed Light. My mother told me old stories about them. Warrior monks who hunted corrupted faiths, those who knew of the broken Christ and fought to seal him away. They found me before I found them. An old man with one eye appeared before me in the snow. His name was Father Elias. He examined the faint thorn scars crawling up my neck and whispered, "You've heard his voice?" "Yes," I breathed. "He's using a boy named Samuel. He's spreading." Father Elias looked grim. "We have failed before. We cannot fail again." They armed themselves not with swords, but with relics soaked in silence, ancient prayers forbidden by the church, scriptures written in languages older than Christ himself. They prepared me for the final battle. They taught me the last prayer, a prayer that doesn't save souls, it severs them. When I returned to Graymore with the monks, the village was nearly gone. The people had either fled or been taken into the growing congregation. In the center of the square, a new cross had risen, but this one was not made by human hands. It was formed from blackened roots, twisted bones, and the whispering vines of the curse. Samuel stood at its base, waiting. His face was no longer that of the boy I knew. His eyes were pits of bleeding light. His voice carried the weight of thousands. "Anna, you've come to believe. That's all I needed." The monks formed a circle around us, chanting the severance prayer, but the shadows broke through their circle. One by one, the monks fell, dragged screaming into the earth as their bodies rotted in seconds. Father Elias, his voice steady even in death, whispered to me, "Finish the prayer, sever him, or he will spread forever." I faced Samuel, but it wasn't just Samuel now. The broken Christ loomed behind him, massive and deformed, crucified but writhing, his arms nailed but reaching, his face hidden behind a crown of thorns that dug so deep it bled roots into the earth. "You cannot stop me now," the voice thundered through Samuel's mouth. "I have been born again through your belief, through your fear." I fell to my knees, trembling, and began reciting the forbidden severance prayer. "Let not the flesh bind the shadow. Let not the name bear the sin. Let the body be severed." The ground split open beneath me. The cross shuddered, the vines burned. Samuel screamed, not in pain, but in desperation. "Stop! You prayed to me, you believed in me, but I kept going. Let the faith that chained him now unmake him. Let his name fall silent from all tongues. Let the last believer forget him." The broken Christ howled. His shadow began unraveling, peeling away like burning paper. But then Samuel's voice returned, his true voice. "Anna, please, I don't want to be alone again." I hesitated, for just a moment. His eyes, his real eyes, begged me not to finish. But I remembered the nights at my window, the whispers from the well, the children who vanished, the priest's hand burning to ash, and I spoke the last line, "I sever thee." The cross collapsed in on itself, the vines shriveled, the church bells crumbled to dust, the shadow was gone, the whispers stopped. Samuel fell to his knees, his body weak, tears falling down his pale face. "It's quiet," he whispered. "For the first time, it's quiet." I wanted to help him. I wanted to hold him, but I knew what I had to do. The severance prayer only worked if the last believer vanished too. "Goodbye, Samuel." His eyes widened. "Anna, wait." But I had already made my choice. I spoke the final severing word one last time, not aloud, but in my heart. And with that, Samuel disappeared. His body turned to dust in the wind. The curse was gone. The village fell silent. I live far away now. I never speak of him. I never tell his story. I've burned the prayer. I've erased every trace. But sometimes, just sometimes, when I walk past an old church, I see a boy in the shadows, his hand raised, his face pale, and I hear him whisper just once, "Please, remember me." I never look back. because I know remembering is all he needs to return.